What if Peter Parker misunderstood Uncle Ben when he said, "With great power comes great responsibility"? In most realities, Peter Parker's life is the same. The bullied kid takes a trip to a lab where he gets bitten by a radioactive spider. The bite gives him powers far beyond the normal man. The once weak, skinny kid is now a superhero. But instead of saving lives, Peter cashes in on those powers, wrestling Crusher Hogan to make a couple bucks. He dons a goofy costume to hide his true identity. Peter becomes a star in the world of wrestling. A man gives him a card, praising Peter's showmanship and promising a life of riches awaits. Wearing a fancy new suit, Peter joins talk shows, goes on TV, mesmerizes crowds with his incredible abilities, too busy counting his cash to stop a thief. But his life is changed forever when he comes home to find his Uncle Ben dead, shot by a burglar. But in this universe, he decides to make his uncle's killer pay the ultimate punishment. The police have the killer surrounded, locked in an empty warehouse with nothing but a single gun and survival instincts. Peter, wearing the outlandish costume that made him famous, creeps along the walls. The killer thinks the darkness is his friend, that he can slip away through the night. The killer quickly realizes he was wrong. Spider-Man emerges from the darkness, donned in black with a skull emblazoned on his chest, striking fear into any enemy. With lightning-quick reflexes, Spidey webs the killer's shooting hand before he can let a bullet fly. For the first time, Peter feels a tingling, a spider sense. It warns him before the burglar fires through the webbing, giving Peter enough time to dodge and leap onto his prey. As Peter wrestles with Ben's killer, a young journalist creeps up the steps with a camera. The Daily Bugle's Ned leads, hoping for a front-page scoop. Peter knocks the burglar into the light. It's the man he had let escape from backstage, Uncle Ben's killer, and Peter could have stopped him. Peter knows he had the power to save Uncle Ben. Part self-hatred, part vengeance, Peter takes the man's gun and shoots him in the chest. This isn't your ordinary Spider-Man. The burglar stumbles backwards, blood oozing from the hole in his chest. The man falls dead as smoke continues to pour from Peter's web-covered gun. Ned creeped a little too close to the action, stumbling backwards and crashing through the railing. Ned tumbles down toward the ground below before a quick dose of webbing catches his arm. A flash goes off, giving the world its first image of Spider-Man, the Punisher. Peter stares at the front page of the Bugle. They've given him a new name, the Punishing Spider. As always, J. Jonah Jameson had spun the news, telling the city this new hero is terrorizing the city. Peter doesn't care. All he thinks about is Ben's old catchphrase, "With great power comes great responsibility." With this newfound power, it's up to him to stop more innocent lives from being taken by any means necessary. The Punishing Spider begins to lay waste to New York City's criminal presence. By rigging a camera nearby, he's able to profit off his alter ego, selling pictures to the Daily Bugle. "Be careful this Punisher Spider psycho doesn't spot you and ventilate you with that gun." The Punishing Spider keeps a gun at his hip at all times, the same gun he'd taken from Ben's killer. So far, he's been able to defeat every enemy without using it, relying on his powers alone. But with every defeat, the villains come back for revenge. Each time, they become more vicious and more dangerous. The Green Goblin is the most persistent. As the Punishing Spider battles Green Goblin above the city, a policeman takes a shot to the Goblin's chest. Watching the Goblin shrug off the bullet was a wake-up call. Spidey does some digging, realizing that the Green Goblin wears reactive armor, projecting every bullet that hit him. Just in case, the Goblin wears layers of bulletproof fibers as extra insurance. So Peter comes home and does a few experiments. He'll need a few new tricks of his own to stop the Goblin. Peter develops a small caliber gun chain magazine that feeds into his web shooters, with sensors in his palm to call up any ammo type he needs. Peter's police scanner pops on. Flashes of the city's underworld gang members have been turning deadly. 8 bodies of drug traffickers have been found in Brooklyn, killed by rival gangs. Fine, let the scum kill each other off. The Punishing Spider swings away to test his new weaponry against the Sinister Six, a group of several old foes joined together. These villains had attacked the wrong people, Mary Jane and Aunt May. EMP rounds fry Electro to a crisp. Explosive rounds make easy work of the vicious Kraven. After battling Mysterio's robot X-Men, Spidey gets up close and personal to crack Mysterio's dome. Incendiary rounds turn Sandman into glass, all the easier to shatter. Vulture's wings are useless when Spidey fries their power source. Armor-piercing rounds cut right through the metal tentacles of the mastermind behind all of this, Dr. Octopus. Spidey walked out of the carnage to rescue May and Mary Jane. When the presence of the punishing spider results in sheer terror on their faces, Peter is reminded why he can never reveal his identity to those he loves. Peter begins to feel guilty about profiting off the dead Sinister Six, but the results speak for themselves. Criminal activity has slowed to an all-time low in New York, partly because many criminals fear the punishing spider, partly because many more are dead. So Peter's able to focus more on his own life rather than his alter ego. He has a new best friend, his Empire State University roommate, Harry Osborn. He's smitten with another classmate, the beautiful and smart Gwen Stacy. But as Peter spends less time as the punishing spider, the criminal underworld takes notice. Gangs begin to fight for territory. The Kingpin almost consolidated things. I made sure that he now consolidates only in hell. Now, leaderless gangsters just shoot themselves in the streets, which is fine by Peter. Peter's focus is now solely on his new girl, Gwen Stacy. The lovely new pair double date with Harry and Mary Jane, Peter's old flame. For a moment, Gwen feels a tinge of jealousy, but it's clear that Peter's mind is only on Gwen. They pass a newsstand, touting low crime rates and fewer appearances of the punishing spider. As much as Peter wants to ignore the criminal world, it refuses to ignore him. Green Goblin is able to learn Peter's secret identity, swearing vengeance on the punishing spider. The Goblin drugs Peter, drags him through the streets, and ties him up in a warehouse for one final face-off. The Goblin reveals his secret identity, Norman Osborn, father to Peter's best friend. Peter mocks Norman for needing to cheat to beat Peter, drugging him. Norman insists that he always would have won, if not for the punishing spider's weaponry. I'm prepared to prove it. Go ahead. Suit up, minus your firepower. Peter rips off his binds, masks up, and faces the Goblin, agreeing not to use his guns. Instead, Peter uses a different sort of firepower, his webbing. The punishing spider takes down the Goblin, leaving Norman cowering on the floor. Peter steps forward to kill Norman, making sure this could never happen again. Harry? No, you're not my son. Who are you? Peter realizes he can't kill Harry's father, especially not in this state. Hopefully, Norman's amnesia will keep Peter's identity safe. That worked, at least for a little while. Norman's mind begins to unravel. Whatever mental fortitudes inside Norman's head that kept that Goblin at bay fail catastrophically. The memories start pouring back into Norman's head, and he seeks revenge. The Green Goblin attacked the person closest to Peter's heart, making it hurt as much as possible. Peter swings through his apartment window to find the place trashed. There's no note, no ransom, no threat, just a pumpkin bomb sitting in the middle of the floor. The Green Goblin has kidnapped Gwen Stacy. Mr. Parker, if you wish Gwen Stacy to live, you must die. The Green Goblin stands atop the George Washington Bridge, ripping Gwen's throat as she dangles over the water. The Goblin tells Peter to take off his web shooters, dump his weapons, and leap off the bridge. Otherwise, Norman lets go. Without a word or a moment's hesitation, Peter raises his gun. One chance. He fires it at the Goblin's chest, praying his armor-piercing tech will work. As the bullet strikes the Goblin's chest, he cackles, but the laughter slows to a halt. Norman looks down to see a gaping hole in his chest, and then begins to fall down toward the water. Likewise, Gwen tumbles down, plummeting toward her death. Acting purely on instinct, Peter fires a web. It catches her foot, just enough to send her onto a nearby platform as Norman crashes dead into the water below. Peter leaps to her side. She's not breathing. There's no pulse. He sheds his mask and performs CPR. Slowly, she coughs. She opens her eyes. She's alive. Gwen is shocked to see her savior, the punishing spider, is her beloved Peter Parker. But Peter's only concern is that he almost got her killed. In the high-stakes world of superhero work, those you can't save die. There's no in-between. Peter joins Harry at the hospital to identify Norman's body. Harry storms out of the morgue, swearing vengeance against the punishing spider. The police have done nothing, and now a good man is dead. If I don't do it, who's going to punish the Punisher? Peter somberly heads to the hospital to check on Gwen. He reflects on his life as the punishing spider. He thought he was protecting his loved ones, but instead, he's thrust them into escalating cycles of violence. It's time to leave that life behind and focus on what's ahead, marrying Gwen Stacy. Peter comes clean about all his secrets, his dark alter ego. He proposes to her on that hospital bed, and the two share a kiss. That night, he heads back home and swears off his double life. As the television reporter gives the dreadful news of crime in New York, Peter shoves his black and white costume into a bag and swings off into the night. He has the power and therefore the responsibility to protect those he loves, and he almost botched it. Never again. In a dark, stormy alleyway, far away from prying eyes, Peter shoves his costume into the trash. That costume which has brought him nothing but pain. He is the punishing spider no more. I chose a path of love, not vengeance, and that's made all the difference. Peter takes Gwen home from the hospital bearing flowers. The two head off to spend the rest of their lives together as the taxi radio chirps about a mob war pouring into the streets of New York. The Costa gang had abducted Forrest Hunt, former banker and infamous money launderer who had skimmed from the gang's bankroll. The gang tied up Hunt in the middle of Central Park for torture and execution. At that same time, a man and his family are looking for the best place to fly their kites. The family, the Castles, stumble onto the scene by accident. The gang swore there'd be no witnesses, so they turn their guns to this family, killing the two children and the wife. The father survived, but had to watch his children die. He crawls away aimlessly, the trauma just too much to bear. The bullets had torn through his leg and shoulder, but this man is a highly decorated former Marine. He can take a few bullets. The man finds himself in a dark alleyway, then crashes into a trash can, the same trash where Peter had dumped his suit. With tears in his eyes, the man, Frank Castle, looks at the skull-embroidered black suit and knows what he has to do. He'll get revenge on the mob for slaying his family, punishing those who threaten innocent lives by any means necessary.